Hey guys, we're going to be taking some notes. We're going to watch a video together, and I'm going to pause as we go along. The first thing they're going to talk about is how gender is assigned. So you can write genders on the left of your Cornell notes, and we'll go from there.
Fact might pop out of you when you see this. What determines whether someone is, or who determines whether someone is, whether their offspring are male or female? Is it the mom or the dad? Well, the mom always donates an X chromosome. So in no way does the mom, what the haploid genetic makeup of the mom's egg, of the gamete from the female, in no way does that determine the gender of the offspring. It's all determined by whether, let's say these are all of, let me just draw a bunch of, dad's got a lot of sperm, and they're all racing towards the egg, and some of them have an X chromosome in them, and some of them have a Y chromosome in them. And obviously they have others. And obviously the one, if this guy up here wins the race, or maybe I should say this girl, if she wins the race, then the fertilized egg will develop into a female. If this sperm wins the race, then the fertilized egg will develop into a male. So and the reason why I said it's ironic is throughout history, and probably the most famous example of this is Henry VIII. Henry VIII. You have these, I mean, it's not just the case with kings. It's probably true because most of our civilization is male dominated, that you've had these men who are obsessed with producing a male heir to kind of take over the family name. And, in the case of Henry VIII, take over a country. And they become very disappointed, and they tend to blame their wives when the wives keep producing females. But it's all their fault. Henry VIII, I mean, the most famous case was with Anne Boleyn. She's some, I'm not an expert here, but the general notion is that, look, he became upset with her that she wasn't producing a male heir, and then he found a reason to get her essentially decapitated, even though it was all his fault. His fault. He was maybe producing a lot more sperm that looked like that than was looking like this. He eventually does produce a male heir, so he was, and if we assume that it was his child, then obviously he was producing some of these, but for the most part it was all Henry VIII's fault. So that's why I say there's a little bit of irony here, is that the people doing the blame are the people to blame for the lack of a male heir. Now, one question that might immediately pop up in your head is,
okay. So the next thing he's going to talk about is the difference between X and Y chromosomes. So you can write X and Y chromosomes on the left.
Sal, is everything on these chromosomes related to just our, maybe sex determining traits, or are there other stuff on them? So let's draw some chromosomes. So let's say that's an X chromosome, and this is a Y chromosome. Now the X chromosome, it does code for a lot of more things, although it is kind of famously gene poor. It codes for on the order of 1,500 genes. And the Y chromosome is pretty, I mean, it's the most gene poor of all the chromosomes. It only codes for on the order of 78 genes. I just looked this up, but who knows if it's exactly 78. What it tells you is it does very little other than determining what the gender is. And the way it determines that, it does have one gene on it called the SRY gene. You don't have to know that. SRY, that plays a role in the development of testes, or the male sexual organ. So if you have this around, this gene right here can start coding for things that will eventually lead to the development of the testicles. And if you don't have that around, that won't happen, so you'll end up with a female. And I'm making gross oversimplifications here. But everything I've dealt with so far is this is clearly plays a role in determining sex. But you do have other traits on these genes. For example, and the famous cases all deal with specific disorders.
Okay, the next thing he's going to talk about is X-linked disorders. And that's the bulk of what we're going to be doing today is X-linked disorder crosses. So you can write X-linked traits on the left.
So for example, color blindness, the genes or the mutations I should say. So the mutations that cause color blindness, red-green color blindness, which I did in green, which is maybe a little bit maybe inappropriate, color blindness, and also hemophilia. Hemophilia. This is an inability of your blood to clot. Actually, there's several types of hemophilia, but hemophilia is an inability for your blood to clot properly. And both of these are mutations on the X chromosome. Mutations on the X chromosome. And they're recessive mutations. They're recessive. So what does that mean? It means both of your X chromosomes have to have, let's take the case for hemophilia, both of your X chromosomes have to have the hemophilia mutation in order for you to show the phenotype of having hemophilia. So for example, if there's a woman, and let's say this is her genotype. She has one regular X chromosome, and then she has one X chromosome that has the, I'll put a little superscript there for hemophilia. She has the hemophilia mutation. She's just going to be a carrier. Her phenotype right here, her phenotype is going to be no hemophilia. No hemophilia. She'll have no problem clotting her blood. The only way that a woman could be a hemophiliac is if she gets two versions of this, because this is a recessive mutation. Two versions. Now this individual will have hemophilia. Now men, they only have one X chromosome. They only have one X chromosome. So for a man to exhibit hemophilia, to have this phenotype, he just needs it only on the one X chromosome he has. So, and then the other one's a Y chromosome. So a man will have, so this man will have hemophilia. So a natural question should be arising is, hey, you know, this guy, let's just say that this is a relatively infrequent.
Okay, the next thing that he's going to talk about is the math behind it. So you can write math on the left.
Mutation that arises on X chromosome. The question is, who's more likely to have hemophilia, a male or a female? All else equal, who's more likely to have it? Well, if this is a relatively infrequent allele, a female, in order to display it, has to get two versions of it. So if the frequency of it, let's say that the frequency of it, and I looked it up before this video, roughly they say between 1 in 5 to 10,000 men exhibit hemophilia. So let's say that the allele frequency of this is 1 in 7,000 is the frequency of XH. Right, the hemophilia version of the X chromosome. And that's why 1 in 7,000 men display it, because it's completely determined whether, there's a 1 in 7,000 chance that this X chromosome they get is the hemophilia version. Who cares what the Y chromosome they get is, because that essentially doesn't code at all for the blood clotting factors and all of the things that drive hemophilia. Now, for a woman to get hemophilia, what has to happen? She has to have two X chromosomes with the mutation. Well, the probability of each of them having the mutation is 1 in 7,000. So the probability of her having hemophilia is 1 in 7,000 times 1 in 7,000, or that's 1 in, 49 million. So as you could imagine, the incidence of hemophilia in women is much lower than the incidence of hemophilia in men. And in general, for any sex-linked trait, if it's recessive, if it's a recessive sex-linked trait, which means men will, if they have it, they're going to show it because they don't have another X chromosome to dominate it. Or for a woman to show it, she's have to have both versions of it. The incidence in men is going to be I guess we could say so let's say that P is, or let me write, M is the incidence in men. Incidence, I'm spelling badly, incidence in men, then the incidence in women will be what? You could view this as the allele frequency of that mutation on the X chromosome. So women have to get two versions of it. So the woman's frequency is m squared. And you might say, hey, that looks like a bigger number, I'm squaring it. But you have to remember that these numbers, the frequency is less than 1. So in the case of hemophilia, that was 1 in 7,000. So if you square 1 in 7,000, you get 1 in 49 million. Anyway.
Okay, so I'm going to run through a couple of examples with you guys. When you're doing X-linked crosses, you're always going to cross, this thing would work, sorry. You're always going to cross a female and a male. This thing would start working correctly. Sorry. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I'm actually an example of the X-linked disorder. I'm actually a carrier for hemophilia. I got it from my dad. Remember, the males always determine sex. So in making me a female, my dad actually gave me the gene for hemophilia. So we're going to cross my dad, who does have hemophilia, so he's going to have a little C right here, with a normal mother. Hemophilia doesn't run in my mom's family at all. Let me fix this. There you go. Okay. So you make a Punnett square. It doesn't matter where you put the parents. I'm going to put my dad up here. And then I'm going to cross it with my mom. So when we cross, we're going to get this. And then a boy. And then another one. There we go. Okay. So then the question might be, how many kids have hemophilia? So if we look at our answers here, 0% have hemophilia. Because females need the C's to be on both X's in order to have hemophilia. Remember, it's like 1 in 49 million to 1 chances of a woman getting hemophilia. We will say that 50%, these two guys, are carriers. So these guys are still normal, but they're carriers for hemophilia, but they don't actually have it themselves. And then 50%, the males, are normal. No carriers. Because they don't have it on either gene. Okay, so let's try another example. We'll say a woman who's a carrier for color blindness. So this time mom's going to be a carrier. Marries a guy who is colorblind. Cross those two and then see what comes out. Okay, so now both of these are going to have C's. And then the question is, how many kids will be colorblind? So we have one here. So this girl will be colorblind. This boy will also be colorblind. No one else is colorblind. So we'll say 50% is colorblind. The other question might be, how many are a carrier? Only this one's a carrier because boys either have it or they don't. So we'll say 25% are carriers. The last guy is neither a carrier nor does he have it, so he's completely normal. 25% normal. It'll also ask you to make a karyotype. Oh, sorry, not a karyotype, a pedigree out of this. So it'll give you the same situation, mother who's a carrier for colorblindness with a father who is colorblind, and then they might say something like produce a colorblind daughter. When you're making your pedigrees, boys are always squares, and then girls are always circles. So this is mom and dad. So dad is colorblind, so what you're going to do with him is you're going to fill him in all the way. Mom is a carrier for, what happened? Sorry, fill him in all the way. Mom is a carrier for colorblindness, so she's not going to be filled in all the way. She's only going to be filled in halfway. And they're going to have a daughter who is colorblind. Sorry, keeps doing that. So when they produce the daughter, she is completely colorblind, so she's going to be filled in all the way. And that's what you have to do for your assignment today. If you have any questions, let me know or come in for tutoring.